How's it going there, Joker?
Doing good.
So, got a question for us this week? Because I am blank.
This week I do. So, if you could have if you can learn under any Jedi Master, who would it be?
You know I'm going to go with Qui-Gon.
Oh, yeah. I pretty much knew exactly when I thought of the question a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I already know his answer.
Qui-Gon would be my Jedi Master.
I was like, not the same sense as you. I as much as I would like to be Kenobi's student, I would have to go with either Qui-Gon or Quinlan Vos, because they're both very non-rigid in the Jedi Code and kind of a little more laid back, and
they kind of believe in going with the Force
and not always agreeing with the council.
Which fair.
But that would definitely be one of my choices.
That's a good choice. And folks, let us know on here which one you would go with, or who you would go pick. So that leads us into this week's character. So before we get started, welcome to Are You a Fan by MoonBound Productions. If you like the episode, give us a like, share, heck, even follow us. Now, this week's episode is going to be on Qui-Gon Jinn. Heck yeah, great lead-in. Okay, so let's start out with Qui-Gon was born in 80 BBY and died in 32 BBY.
So, for anybody who either hasn't seen our Star Wars episodes yet or doesn't remember, the BBY is how many years before the Battle of Yavin in episode 4.
Yes, which, it's a good marker.
It's a great marker for the fans.
It's weird in universe.
Well, like we talked about before, is I doubt that's in universe. That is just a fan thing, so we know when in the movies everything kind of happened.
Would it be a little weird if it was in universe?
I mean, they wouldn't be able to use that in universe.
Oh yeah, true. Okay, so let's get into it. You want to start us off?
So I can. So in his early life, Qui-Gon would be born as a human male on the galactic capital of Coruscant, and being identified as a Force sensitive, he would be taken for training to the Jedi by the Jedi Order. He was assigned to the Helios clan, where he learned lightsaber combat from Jedi Master Terras Nube. So, from what I learned doing the research, because I didn't really know a whole lot about the whole Jedi initiates, but it sounds like they get put in these like little group classes almost. To where they all learn from certain things from one master at the same time.
I mean, that would seem like probably the most efficient way to do it.
So it's kind of like when with in episode 2 when Obi-Wan goes to Yoda asking about the planet, and he's got that class.
Yeah,
so that's basically a clan. So it's all students that all take the classes together.
I mean, that seems like it'd probably be the most efficient way to do it.
Oh yeah, especially as many Jedi as they had at that time,
right? Like,
and how many people they kept bringing in to train.
They were just snatching up children left and right.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so at 12 years old, Jinn would be assigned as a Padawan to Jedi Master Dooku, from whom he learns the ways of the Force. Ooh.
Yeah, which they do allude to that in episode 2.
Yeah, I remember that. Which is an interesting. We gotta do an episode on Dooku one of these days.
Oh heck yeah.
And but it's just interesting to see that he was Qui-Gon's master, actually.
Right. And as one of Yoda's students, and it just kind of goes down the line.
Yeah, really.
Everybody's connected in these movies.
I was about to say they're all connected, really, actually. Yeah.
Yep. So around 68 BBY, when he presented himself to his new master in Dooku's quarters, Dooku would observe that Jinn would be frightened, or was frightened, and after a moment of silence and with pressure from Dooku, Jinn would confess that he was. Which, makes sense. You're a kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's what threw me off, like, in the movies with Anakin when they're like, oh, you're afraid? And that, like, almost like they were like, oh, you can't be afraid. It's like, he's a kid who just got taken away from his own planet.
Right.
And how have you guys not dealt with more scared children?
Exactly.
So, yeah, no, that just kind of cracks me up. When asked why, after looking into himself through the fear, Jinn answered that he was not afraid of Dooku, but of not becoming a Jedi, that he was afraid of failing and of not being worthy. Dooku then summarized it as Jin being afraid of himself, of a future not being the one he wanted. Jin confirmed it, fearing that Dooku would reject him for this cowardice. Dooku instead said that it was very wise, surprising Jin. Which, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that, like, I almost feel like Dooku would have had a profound respect for the fact that he's not afraid. Yeah, not afraid of Dooku, not afraid of necessarily Tascam, but afraid of his own shortcomings.
Yep.
Which is ultimately, we are our biggest enemies. So.
But also that even he would admit to being afraid.
Oh, that too.
Because, especially as a male kid, especially in our society, like, that's just something you're taught not to show. So it's cool that they do show that he was that weak or that vulnerable child that was like, no, I am afraid, but I'm afraid of not living up to what I could be or what you would want me to be.
Which I guess just juxtapose is very actually brave.
Oh yeah,
thing to do. So yeah, no, kudos.
And so, smiling, Dooku would explain that most Padawans would deny their fear. And even if they admitted it, they would not have Jin's self-knowledge. Dooku would then further praise Jin for his honesty, insight, and intelligence.
Bam.
Especially the honesty is like being honest enough to admit that you're afraid and what you're afraid of is a huge first step.
Oh, especially for a kid.
Oh,
yeah, like you said in that. Well, we've even seen some of the shows and some of the Star Wars things with some of the young Padawan type characters, and then they're like, I'm not afraid, when clearly it's like they're shaking at the knees.
Right.
It's like, you can admit you're afraid, man. Like, okay, so on a tour of the Jedi Temple, their last stop would be the Jedi Archives, where they examined holocrons of various eras. Not to study them, but simply for Jin to learn his way around. Which is smart. Gotta give him, especially in these big temples, it's probably good to have the kid, know
where everything is.
Yeah, so they don't just, like, I could see somebody starving to death or dying of dehydration with how big these temples are.
Oh, God, yeah, especially the one in Coruscant. Like, that thing was massive.
Oh, yeah, just somebody's wandering the halls and they just come across a corpse. It's like, lost another one who got lost.
Right. So it's definitely good to show them where everything is. So, while here, an ancient holocron, more ancient and different in shape than the rest, would catch Jin's eye. When he questioned his master about it, he was shocked by the expression of Dooku's face, almost as if he considered it an enemy. Dooku would answer that it was a holocron of Jedi prophecies.
Yep.
So, yeah, Qui-Gon and his whole prophecy thing very much got from his master, as we kind of learn a little bit here in a second. But he started at a very early age.
Sounds like it. And honestly, man, prophecies in any genre, in any medium, and that prophecies are always a weird thing to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
And the Jedi, like, even in Star Wars, it's always been a big thing of, like, you can't analyze it too much.
Yep.
And that you can't full-blown believe it's 100% accurate.
Well, that, and then a lot of it's up to the interpretation of the reader.
Exactly. That's arguably that's always the biggest one.
Exactly.
So Jin asked if there are Jedi prophets, to which Dooku replied, not any longer. He explained to Jin that mystics sought undue knowledge of the future, which led them down dangerous paths. The dark side often tempted those drawn too deeply into them. Dooku then finished by saying that is why the Jedi study prophecy no longer. Then turned to leave, which meant Jin had to follow. That kind of makes sense.
Oh, yeah, especially with some of the prophecies that you can read or some of the things that you can find with the holocrons can very easily tempt you into the power of the dark side.
Oh, yeah, especially basically, being precognitive.
Yep, which is not a good thing just because a lot of Jedi have that ability to be that precognitive. It's like, that can lead to a lot of dangerous situations.
I mean, especially because even in Star Wars, it's fairly the whole concept of being able to see in the future or anything like that. It's very loose.
Oh,
it's like half the time in that when they fear something's going to happen, they do stuff. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because they're the reason it even starts to occur.
Yeah, look at Anakin.
Right? The biggest example that almost a dozen movies were made on.
Yep. And all because he had visions of his wife.
Yeah. Kind of dropped the ball on that one, Annie.
Yep. So Jin would then ask Dooku if just wanting to know the future can lead to the dark side. Dooku would reply that it takes much more than that. This would be Qui-Gon's first encounter with the holocron of prophecies, but definitely would not be his last.
Ooh, foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is foreshadowing. Okay, so, oh, man. I mean, I can see how, just wanting to have an idea of the future would not lead to the dark side. It's the corruption.
Yep.
And that, which, knowing the future could easily corrupt.
Exactly.
So after 4 months as a Padawan, the council sent him with his master to Shurapak. Am I pronouncing that right?
No idea.
We're going with Shurapak. To participate in a battle on its surface, which was Qui-Gon's very first. Here he would meet another former Padawan of Dooku's, d-rael Averos.
Qui-Gon felt as though d-rael Averos would be the link between the Padawan he was and the knight he desperately wished to be. He viewed his journey to be easier now that he had a friend to show him the path. Because we do kind of skip over because there wasn't a whole lot that really happened in the battle that was really noteworthy. More just that he found a friend and someone he could confide in that could help, that he thought could help lead him to being who he wanted to be.
And fair, and honestly, that's kind of a huge thing because I feel like the Jedi need their confidants.
Oh yeah,
they need their friends. And that it's a very helpful thing that helps a lot of Jedi, despite what the Council keeps throwing out there.
Well, there's nothing against having friends.
True.
But it's just the whole concept of you need friends to be able to essentially survive.
Yes.
Because you need people to be able to talk to and to connect with. And so he found one in one of his master's former students.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. Sometimes... Okay, sometime after the battle, Qui-Gon was doing homework in Dooku's quarters while his master was in conference. He then had a surprise visit from d-rael Averos, who greeted Jin warmly. Qui-Gon greeted him with a similar warmth. That sounds like a blossoming friendship.
Yep. And yeah, that was something that Dooku would kind of let Qui-Gon do, is do work in his quarters, so that way he could be free of distractions and not being disturbed by other kids and other Jedi.
And fair, that would be the way to do it, especially if you're out at taking Jedi meetings.
Yeah,
and
it's
stuff
like if you're with a council or doing something else, like it's a great place for him to be.
Exactly, just empty quarters, nice and quiet.
Yep. So after some catching up, they would go into the Jedi archives, and together they studied the one and only holocron that ever interested Jin, the one that held the ancient prophecies. Yeah, he definitely had a lot of issues of
listening.
Yeah, well, not just that, but just being, I feel like, as a kid, too curious for his own good.
Yep. Curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back. So they were all fascinating to him. Qui-Gon kept reading, unable to stop. He asked d-rael if the ancient mystics had these visions in trances, to which he confirmed. After contemplating these prophecies, Jin remarked that Dooku said he should ignore the holocron and that he doesn't believe in the prophecies. Which is a little weird when you find out certain things about Dooku.
I think when we do an episode on Dooku, it'll explain a little bit more
probably
on what exactly turned him, quote unquote, away from prophecies.
And I imagine it would, but clearly Qui-Gon's not getting that same sour taste.
Oh yeah, no. But so that statement would confuse d-rael, since Dooku was the one who introduced him to it, and that it used to be the one that could hardly pry the holocron out of his quarters. And Qui-Gon would say that he didn't know when or why that changed, and that Dooku didn't explain.
So clearly there's something there.
Yeah.
Clearly there's
something in one of those, I think, that Dooku read that made, or something happened to, similar to one that went in a bad way, that Dooku was like, no, we're not going to do that anymore.
Which, yeah, sometimes it only takes one bad incident with stuff like that to be like, you know what? I was doing better without it.
And like, it's better if we don't know this stuff or even think about this in the mindset.
Fair. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon Jinn's like, I am going to let this guide my very existence.
He kind of did.
Yeah, because, the whole prophecy of the Chosen One.
Yep.
Okay, so tracking Shenda Mal. Jinn and his Jedi Master Dooku became part of the Numidian Prime Strike Team. They were assembled to track and find notorious felon bounty hunter Shenda Mal. They eventually tracked her at her hideout on the planet Numidium Prime. Numidium Prime. Autobots, roll out. Sorry, this immediately went through my mind. That's kind of cool. I always forget that even though the Jedi technically before the Clone Wars, they're not soldiers, but they're basically they're basically like the Knights Templar.
Kind of, yeah, which that's not what they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
As you see, especially if you look into the ancient or like the old Republic, even though they were still a little too heavily invested in the government and connected, they became much more, where it was almost like when the Republic was like, hey, we have this really difficult thing we need you guys to go deal with because you're better at this.
Yeah, and I it's one of those I always forget that even before the Clone Wars, they did have like basically strike teams and hunt like straight up go out, capture. If you can't capture, murk this guy.
I was like, well, I don't think this was actually their strike team. That they were a part of a strike team that was already involved.
Okay,
so it's just the two Jedi apart, like basically being attached to it.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like, okay, this planet's our own strike team, but now we're sending Republic dignitaries to help.
Kind of back them up.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So while searching for her hideout, Maul captured Jinn. Before Maul could kill Jinn, Dooku would strike her down with Force Lightning to save his apprentice, causing Jinn a degree of concern. I feel like you should have a lot more than just a degree of concern. Because if a Jedi is openly using lightning...
It's rarely ever been it's rarely ever not led to a bad thing.
Oh yeah, there's only one Jedi that's ever been allowed to use a form of lightning because it didn't rely on the dark side.
Yeah, I think you were telling me about that one day.
It was Plo Koon.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we know Dooku is very talented with Force Lightning, but we know his is not one that does not use the dark side.
Oh, yep. So Jinn later confided what Dooku did to d-rael Varos, though at the time Varos expressed that he was not all too concerned regarding his former master's conduct. At some point in his life after the mission, Jinn went through trials on Felucia. There we go. Thank you. And although his commitment was tested, he ultimately stayed loyal to the Jedi Order. Which, because, isn't that kind of the whole, point of becoming, a knight or a master?
Yeah, so that's how you become a knight, is you go through... I don't know exactly what the trials are, because I know they can vary person to person.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to go through a series of trials to go from being just a Padawan, an apprentice, to being an actual full-fledged knight. Except for as we talk with a little bit in Obi-Wan's episode, or will be talking, the Clone Wars kind of altered that a little bit.
Which makes sense given the circumstances.
Yep. So at some point during his apprenticeship, Jinn would meet the Wookiee, I'm going to go with Brennan, and befriended her. They would share many adventures together, with Brennan saving Jinn on 2 occasions. During the second of those adventures, events transpired that resulted in Jinn feeling as though they had saved each other. He also came to know the Wookiee Balfus. And I mean, it's kind of cool to know that he became friends with some Wookiees.
Yeah, that's actually kind of awesome. I had no idea.
Guarantee they both outlived him.
Yep.
I mean, seeing as basically Han was Chewie's pet.
Yeah.
With the lifespan differences.
I mean, dude, Wookiees live for freaking ever, man.
Oh, God, yeah.
So yeah, no, that's it's kind of cool though to know he had camaraderie with them,
right?
Yeah, because I feel like the Wookiees aren't the easiest ones to build a camaraderie with.
Yeah, no, from what we kind of see of the Wookiees, a lot of it seems to be like you have to have some form of mutual respect for each other.
Yeah.
And have had shown them something of value for them to respect you.
They kind of remind me of like orcs in D&D.
Yeah.
In that regard. Okay, so mission to Pijal.
That's what we're going to go with.
Cool. In 40 BBY, Jinn and Kenobi undertook a mission to Teth and thwart Wanbo, the Hutt. The two Jedi escaped Teth, but not without complications, including a key miscommunication between master and apprentice.
So, obviously, as we're now talking about them being master and apprentice, we go over more of that detail in the Kenobi episode in a couple weeks.
Which fair.
Because obviously being more of his episode and learning what happened, we're just kind of skipping that at the moment.
Fair enough. So you hear that, folks? Tune in next week.
Nope. 2 weeks.
Tune in the next 2 weeks, and we will have answers for you.
So, upon returning to Coruscant, the Jedi High Council would extend to Jinn an invitation to join their ranks, as another master was getting ready to step down by the month's end. Jinn would be shocked to be asked due to his disagreements with the council on various occasions. Because from what I remember looking at in the past is I think they extended it a couple of times to him because they wanted somebody with that slightly different mindset than just what they had on the council.
Which, I mean, makes sense because it's always the old term of like if 9 out of 10 people all agree with each other, and that is the 10th person's job to disagree and bring up possible issues.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's kind of what they wanted Jinn for, was to be that extra person, to question what's going on.
Which makes sense, and honestly, he is the guy for that because he constantly, man, he don't care nothing for the council.
Not at all.
So while he was initially pleased to hear the offer, he thought of his Padawan, who he would have to pass on to a new master if he were to accept. While it would solve the growing problem between them, Jinn felt guilt at the thought of it, and thus told the council that he would meditate on their proposition.
Which is good that it shows that even though they had issues, he didn't really like the idea that he was like, I guess I could take this and just dump you onto another master. It did show some kind of character for him.
Yeah, it shows his level of at least, commitment and commitment to duty.
Right. So meanwhile, a political dispute would erupt on the inner rim planet of Pijal again. A group known as the Opposition that began playing political pranks to protest a treaty signing that would end the absolute monarchy on Pijal. Although the world allowed the world to join the Republic and give more power to corporation, was thought to be making increasingly violent attacks nearing the treaty signing. Jinn's old friend, Rael Everos, would request Jinn and his Padawan's assistance to end the dispute and ensure signing of the treaty.
So they say, like political pranks. I'm just imagining, like a terrorist bombing goes off, and they're like, ha ha, got you.
Right. No, I feel like it was similar to the meme culture of our world. Where it was like them doing jokes or graffiti, like nothing actually dangerous. Bad.
Okay, or like throwing up propaganda posters. And that. Like, okay.
Stuff, I feel like that's what it started as.
But it's amazing how quickly that can escalate sometimes. Right. It's like, guys, I got a great prank. No, put the nerve gas away.
And as long as you don't accidentally blow up a school bus full of kids.
Yep.
I mean, that's a great way to get a terrorist organization to stop being terrorists.
True. Very true. Okay, so the council sent Jinn and his Padawan to Pijal to help. However, as the mission began, Kenobi became aware of the offer presented to Jinn regarding the Jedi Council. When the two met with Supreme Chancellor Karamus Kaj, Jinn felt great shame at not being the first to tell his Padawan learner. Before they left, Jinn sought out Kenobi and the Padawan's dojo. There's a Padawan's dojo? That's cool.
That makes sense. They gotta have a place to learn how to do their fighting.
There's no mercy in this dojo. Silence!
Have you seen the Jedi? That's about accurate.
Right? Oh, God, I love that. I love that that's a thing.
Right. But kind of going back to where he had to stop and think about what that would do with him and his Padawan. It's kind of nice, again, still seeing a little bit of that humanity of like, he is ashamed that he wasn't the one to bring it up to him and the kid found out essentially through a third party.
That is, well, and yeah, no, because it's always rough to find out through a third party.
Oh, yeah, and especially when you're already clearly having issues with your master already, like mentality-wise.
Yeah, that's going to create some cracks and some chasms.
That's already there, so it's just kind of making them a little bit bigger.
Yeah, so, well, let's see how it goes.
So, Jinn would attempt to apologize for not being the first to tell Kenobi the news and said that he had several reservations that he had to dwell on before committing to the position. But Kenobi would make a sarcastic reply. So, apparently the Master's sass started early.
Dang, yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think it actually said what the sass was either.
Aw. I want to know his,
Right, his snappy comeback?
Yeah. Okay, so Jinn told his Padawan that he would continue to discuss the matter when Kenobi was in a more rational mood. And when Kenobi quipped again, God dang it, man, just zing. Jinn sadly said that he supposed that the Force always allows things to turn out for the best. As they traveled to Pijal, the tension between them grew.
Which makes sense.
It does. And that, honestly, though, you got to kind of admit, Qui-Gon was probably the best suited for dealing with Kenobi. In the sense that Qui-Gon is more laid back.
Right.
And any Jedi Master in that, could you imagine Kenobi's sassiness, how that was going to turn out?
Most of the well-known ones would not have turned out good.
Yeah, I just imagine Kenobi constantly just having red marks on his face.
Right, just from all the back smacks.
Yeah, just all the backhands, just like he has a bald spot on the back of his head from the constant just getting slapped upside the head.
Yep.
Oh, God, yes, that's my new headcanon.
So Jinn and Kenobi were both briefed on the situation, learning that Averroes served the Crown Princess Fanry, that's what I'm going to go with, as an advisor, and that he needed to protect her from the opposition as she waited to take Pajal's throne.
A lot of political intrigue.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's one of those, like, you hear stuff like this, and I always just think, I'm like, we could just expand so much into the Star Wars universe as far as movies and shows that have really nothing to do with the main movies that are going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I would love, because I heard rumor that they're considering a horror film based in the Star Wars universe.
Didn't hear about that.
And I was like, yeah, it was going to be on the ice planet with the
the Wampas.
The Wampas. Okay, Jinn and Averroes became reacquainted quickly, although Jinn was skeptical of several of Averroes' choices during his service, as Averroes also loosely interpreted the Jedi Code. As he and Kenobi began to do more investigating on Pajal's moon, they encountered two jewel thieves, Pax Merfer and Rahar Wick. Rahar. Tell me I'm not pronouncing that right.
Well, you're probably not.
Probably not, but like, come on.
But seeing as majority of Star Wars names of things are in books, who knows what the actual pronunciation is?
Very true. So, folks,
that's how I feel when we do our magic episodes. Like, I don't know what it is. I'm going off of what I've heard in the community.
It's literally why when we do the magic ones, I just make fun of every name.
Yep.
So, Rahar Wick. That had to be just bad timing for jewel thieves.
Oh, God, yeah. Like, they clearly did not plan on Jedi being around except for the one advisor.
Yeah. Just like they get there and they're just like, this is the perfect crime. More Jedi show up and they're like,
this is getting out of hand. Now there are three of them.
Yeah. Oh, God, yes.
So, although Pax was very abrasive towards Jinn, Wick was more cooperative. On board their ship, the Merricks, Jinn recruited the two to help them find the terrorists that pose a threat to the treaty. Okay. Which kind of an interesting way for a jewel thief to end up working with the Jedi.
I mean, what better way to catch criminals than bring on a criminal?
Oh, yeah. I just think it's kind of funny that I feel like that's exactly what happens. Like, they were about to get caught in what they were doing. They're like, no, we're going to change plans. We're not going to get in trouble for this.
We're going to say we came to help.
Right? Like, let's just detour back around this later.
Which, I mean, that's a brilliant way to keep going with things. So, shortly after returning, Jinn received a vision of the event, which turned into a bloody battle. He brought it to Averroes' attention, but the older Jedi did not share his level of concern. Because why would he? I mean, you know, he probably has a similar opinion as Dooku on prophecies. Yep. He's also older and been at longer, so why would he listen to the new guy?
But we've also seen, as Jinn kind of doesn't like how he interprets the code, that he probably has a much different mindset and probably has other things at play.
True. He probably also, they probably have a lot of differing opinions on how the Force works.
So as their investigation continued, Jinn would meet with the opposition's leader, Holland Azuka, and learn that the group was being framed. Although they had peacefully made demonstrations against the treaty, the violent terrorist acts that had alerted the Republic were not caused by Azuka's people. Because, you know, what better way to get away with stuff than to frame the group opposing you?
Actually, yeah, no, that's kind of a... what is it called in that when you're that's discrediting 101.
Exactly. That's a great way to do it.
So as Qui-Gon learned of the complications surrounding the treaty due to the lack of Pijali representation and the heavy influence gained by the Zerka Corporation, he decided to oppose the treaty himself and refused to act as a Republic representative.
Which is kind of cool that he would go and make that decision on his own. Yeah. Like, well, clearly this is not actually in the interest of anybody except for a corporation.
Which, I mean, it shows real resolve.
Oh, yeah.
Especially because, like, I remember in the Clone Wars and stuff, everybody complained about how the Jedi became basically the military of the Republic Council, and that's like, looking at this, it's like, it looks like they kind of already were like the enforcers.
Oh yeah, they've always have been, but it was more of, as we talked with the Palpatine episodes, it was portrayed with that essentially they were warmongers, so Palpatine was changing things to make people against the Jedi.
Yeah.
But they've always been a enforcer, but you also gotta remember most of the galaxy didn't know the Jedi actually existed. Like, it was such a vast galaxy. A lot of them thought they were just kind of rumors and myths.
Oh, dang.
So you can easily go, if you're in the right part of the galaxy, you'd never meet one ever. And all you'd see maybe are the hollows.
Dang. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so
however, eventually, the Jedi would discover that Fanry was deceiving them and had been building a military group called the Blackguards, framing the opposition to restore the full monarchy. Because, as we said, you know, what better way to oppose your opponents than to make them look bad?
Yeah.
By framing them.
It's a proven tactic in politics.
Yep.
It works time and time again. But dang, man, they're going for that war. Okay, so at the coronation, she rejected the treaty as well as the Republic's influence, proving herself to having been underestimated by the Jedi. Fair. I mean, dang, man. Stand your ground.
Yep. And unfortunately, it sounds like she probably did it very sneakily and played a certain personality role to show that, you know, maybe she isn't this kind of person.
Which smart, you know, kind of that whole like switcheroo in personality where
yep.
cue intense music.
Exactly. So, ready to remove the Zerka influence from the system by force, she prepared to attack their ships. Jinn attempted to convince her to stop and prevent the innocent casualties that were the Zerka slaves on board the ships. But when she refused, Jinn would take matters in his own hands, and with the help of Kenobi as well as their two new friends, they would succeed in saving the slaves.
Woo! I mean,
you know, he was acting like a Jedi should. He went for the betterment of the people of the planet by opposing the treaty, and then he inserted himself into this to save innocent lives.
Which, that's what a Jedi should do, yeah. That's good to know. That's good to know about Qui-Gon.
Yep.
So after the mission, Jinn decided to stick with training Kenobi and decline the offer to join the Jedi Council. Once again.
Yeah. I want to say that was, I think, the first time he'd actually gotten the offer and refused. But, yeah, he had a lot of those good decisions.
I mean...
honestly, if he didn't stick with training Kenobi, I don't think he would have turned out the way he did.
No, I don't think he would have at all. Just knowing Kenobi and knowing what I know of him in his history, not at all.
So... as a huge Kenobi fan, I'm very happy Jinn did decline the council's offer.
Same. As a Qui-Gon and an Obi-Wan fan, I'm glad.
I know. I also feel like the movie would be very different if Qui-Gon took the offer.
True. Maybe things wouldn't have gone so south.
Right.
Okay, so is this you or me now?
This is me. So, discovering the secrets of life after death. Sometime during his life, Jinn would begin discovering the secrets to manifesting his consciousness after death.
Ooh.
He was kind of there's always kind of been there, but it's always usually something that was learned by the dark side users, as one of their things was they sought immortality to have that power.
Yeah.
So it wasn't common for the Jedi.
Which I don't know how far you go into talking about his thing going into that, because that's one thing that I noticed with the difference between the way the Jedi went about it and the way the Sith went about it. The Sith were obsessed with the material, with the physical realm.
Yeah.
And the Jedi accepted that that's not going to last. So why not just be ethereal and be one with the Force, but maintain the consciousness?
And that was just happened to be how they learned how to.
Yeah. But I feel as though that...
because Jedi in the past, in the ancient times, did learn how to physically do it.
Oh.
Like, no, the whole ethereal thing is just happens to be how Qui-Gon learned how to stay or manifest.
Okay. I actually didn't know that. I do feel as though it would lead to less corrupted Jedi, though.
In theory.
In theory. Yeah, that. Okay. So he traveled to a planet strong with the Force. A world that legend said was the birthplace of life and the origin of midichlorians. He learned from 5 Force priestesses who had retained their consciousness after death. Oh, yeah!
Yeah, so anybody who has watched the Clone Wars cartoon know of who these priestesses are, because it's who Yoda learned from, or kind of learned about stuff from because of Qui-Gon.
Yeah, I remember them. They were interesting.
Yeah, so it was basically like 5 Force priestesses that embodied, or quote-unquote embodied, different kind of personality traits from their faces.
Yeah,
it's kind of like the 7 dwarves.
Yeah, kind of like all the different personalities and emotions attached.
Yep. So he had learned that when a living thing died, its life passed through the living force and into the cosmic force to become one with the Force. Which makes sense, because obviously you got your living stuff and your not living stuff. And it's all just one thing connected, it's just different sides of the Force.
And which is something that I don't know, I've always loved the concept of the Force and how that all works. Like, it's all connected. The Force ultimately, it's all the will of the Force.
Yep.
If the Force wants it to happen, it's going to happen.
Exactly. And that's definitely the mindset that Qui-Gon kind of had.
Which is, I mean, the true mindset of how I, too, follow the Force.
Right.
So, as the living Force and cosmic Force existed in tandem, it became possible for one to retain consciousness and physically manifest themselves after death. Jinn was considered worthy of knowledge of eternal life and secretly began his training to unlock his the mysteries fully. Which, I mean, after you discover that that's even a thing, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah.
And knowing that that's definitely not something that the current generation of Jedi would approve of, because it was that same concept of that's something that the Sith do.
True.
So, of course, you got to go about it secretly.
Oh, yeah. Because, like, I mean, as we've seen, the Jedi Council have a very weird, strict mindset, and this...
Well, it's that very, as Palpatine puts it in Episode 3, it's very dogmatic and it's very narrow.
Yeah.
Which, unfortunately, is just how it evolved over the thousands of years.
I mean, any religion, any type of, like anarchy, or hierarchy of any sort eventually will become corrupt and lose the original meaning of what it should be.
Especially when you have a leader like Yoda who lives for hundreds of years and has been on the council for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's gonna make stuff get stale.
Oh, yeah. So he also learned from a shaman of the wills that achieving eternal consciousness would require absolute selflessness. Which makes sense. That's the best way for them to learn it the Jedi way.
Yeah.
Than the way that the Sith would learn how to do it. Is you have to embody what a Jedi is supposed to be.
True. Which I feel like that's why, like, with this very specific path to maintain the immortality, it is the only one where, like, there is almost could be no corruption because you have to let that go.
Exactly.
And that, like, a Sith would never be able to go through this path.
Oh, God, no. Well, technically they could, because Anakin does. But because he kind of... He's not necessarily selfless because he does it to help his son. It kind of becomes selfless because he's doing it to protect his son, and he's willing to give his life to do it.
Which, that one, we got.
So it's definitely one it's extremely difficult for a Sith to do.
But not impossible.
Yeah, we see at least one does it.
So the Sith would have to let go of the Sith rule, like the Sith way to do it.
Pretty much.
Basically.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Questioning his purpose. After a mission between 44 and 32 BBY that brought great unrest in Jinn being called a warrior, he would speak with Yoda, who sensed the turmoil in Jinn.
So yeah, I kind of took out the story because it was a very long one, but essentially throughout this mission, he would protect some of importance that would call him a great warrior, and knowing that's not what Jedi are supposed to be, that really messed with his mentality and kind of threw him way off balance.
Man,
because he didn't like that thought process that is what they saw him as, not as a protector.
Yeah, I could see how that would mess with him.
Yeah.
I can also see, though, how just most people seeing the Jedi would be like, we're protectors, we're not warriors. It's like, with that laser sword?
Right, it's like, you really want to go with that route? It's like, no, you guys are warriors. It's like, I get that's not necessarily how you want to be perceived, but that's what you are.
Yeah, like what's with the laser sword?
Right.
What's with the laser sword?
So, they would both agree that Jinn should seek answers. Needing a world full of life to find a deep communion with the Force, Jinn would travel off Coruscant, trusting the Force to guide him to answers. This resulted in him coming out of hyperspace above a charted but unnamed world.
Oh. Man, galaxies. Huge.
Right.
After leaving his ship and admiring the planet's beauty, Jinn quickly felt the presence of the dark side on the world, coming to see that a spreading darkness was starting to corrupt the planet. Unsure whether the Force sought for him to stop it or learn from it, Jinn continued on, finding a temple and sitting upon a throne inside. Oof. This is getting real Raiders of the Lost Ark here.
Right. Pondering whether he would find light in the dark monument, Jinn would enter a frightening Force vision. So, in his vision, Jinn was surrounded by red humanoid beings who grew out of dark tendrils. Though at least one of these beings would try to attack him as he fought, Jinn quickly ignited his lightsaber and cut the beings down, only for the red coloration to vanish from those who he had killed.
No. So Jinn... No. Okay, so Jinn saw he had murdered... So Jinn saw he had murdered Jedi. And the same darkness that he had seen on their bodies began to consume him. By choosing violence, the dark side had gained power over him. As the darkness wrapped across his face, Jinn awoke from his vision, horrified only to see the light side had entered into the monument. Whew, man, that was a trip.
Can you imagine having to go through that trip, though?
Dude. I mean, kind of. But, yeah, no. That is,
Yeah, that had to be a living nightmare for a Jedi.
Because I'm not going to lie, didn't even realize at a certain point there that it was a vision. I was like, oh my God, it's happening for real.
Nope.
Okay. That made me feel a little better, but still, that was dark. We got dark there.
So he would realize the Force had taught him that he could find balance, that could be achieved without conflict, as unchecked violence would make the Jedi turn into what they sought to confront, which makes sense.
Yeah.
In fact, he had actually found some of the planet's dark corruption had instead formed into flowers existing in harmony with the light. So it definitely helps where he gets his mentality, where he can see everything kind of coincides and stuff can exist in harmony. While not as common with dark side, but it can.
Well, because, I mean, it goes back to the whole concept. You can't have light without the dark.
Exactly.
It all kind of requires each other to balance itself out.
Yep.
So, after returning to the temple, he again met with Yoda on a temple balcony, leading to another discussion about the Force. Speaking with the Grand Master, Jinn defended finding balance in the Force, believing that the Jedi could not be too rigid, yet could also not give in to the dark side. Which is a very fine line to walk, I will say, but he's right.
Yeah. And especially because, I mean, walking the line could be easy as long as you're not looking for that power or attempting to use those corrupting abilities. Like, if you're just willing to accept that there are some gray areas in the world and in life.
Well, because I believe he just more has found accepting the gray areas, but also just accepting that good, the Force being good or bad. It's just the Force. It's just how we perceive and what we use of it.
It's similar to the concept of, like, with the argument with weapons, like handguns or firearms in the world now. It's a tool. It's how you use it that defines if it's good or bad.
Yeah, and that's always been the case. And I'm more reasons I'm loving Qui-Gon, man.
Right. And because it also kind of rolls it back into the Luke episode with his new temple and his way of thinking as he became a Grand Master of the Force can be used, even the dark side abilities can be used for the right reasons.
Yeah.
It's not inherently bad.
Oh, yeah, entirely. And there's been plenty of Jedi and plenty of Sith on both sides who have proven both.
Exactly. So at this point, we would lead into episode 1, which, knowing where all that leads, we know he dies at the end of it.
Yes.
Which also, as we're going to talk about in the Kenobi episode, does kind of lead into certain mindsets for Kenobi that change because of that final battle,
which we will get into in the Kenobi episode.
But so after his death, he would manifest his spirits once to Kenobi in a vision on Mortis, and then go on to train both Yoda and Kenobi on how to also manifest their consciousness after death.
Still teaching us even when he's gone.
But I do like that even after however 100 years that had been, Yoda still was able to get taught something.
Right? That was anybody listening, if you're not gonna watch any episodes, at least go watch the few episodes where Qui-Gon leads Yoda to learn this power, because they are amazing episodes, and it's beautiful.
And it was also kind of cool. So with him manifesting, we first really get, I mean, up until the very last movie, we only get one other time that really shows Qui-Gon manifesting. Granted, he didn't physically do it, but in episode 2, where Anakin's slaughtering the Tuskens, you could hear Qui-Gon yelling no, and yelling Anakin stop. That was kind of his first introduction, or I guess reintroduction into the franchise as a ghost.
I'm gonna have to rewatch those movies.
Yeah.
Apparently it's been a while. Because I don't. I'm rewatching those this week.
Yeah, you hear him as Anakin's coming out of the tent right after his mother dies, and as he's igniting his saber and starts swinging, you can hear Qui-Gon yelling, "Anakin, no, stop!"
Oh, dang, that is. Wow, that hurts me. Emotional damage.
Emotional damage.
Oh, god dang it. Okay, well, that kind of ends this week's episode on Qui-Gon Jinn. Joker, you a fan?
From growing up mainly only ever seeing him in episode 1, I've always been a fan because he was always that very stoic and cool-looking Jedi. But then as I learned more about him, just cemented him being one of my favorites.
And I gotta say, same. He episode 1, plus I love Liam Neeson as an actor, so I was already always a fan.
Right.
And just like you, yeah, it just learning more about him just cemented it.
Exactly.
For anyone that's still listening, if you got something out of this, enjoyed the episode, or even liked the character before from a movie, comic, cartoon, hell, even that t-shirt that you saw one time, you're a fan too. If you want to jump on this train, why not subscribe and share with a friend? d-rael out. Y'all keep riding them rails.